The door creaked open. It wasn't Max. It was Mr. Furley, the landlord, wearing a leisure suit that looked like it had been salvaged from a disco fire. He was clutching a handkerchief and sobbing. "Oh, Jack, why you? You were so young, so alive," Furley wailed, leaning over the casket. Jack couldn't help it. The pollen from the lilies tickled his nose. A sneeze, violent and undeniable, erupted from the corpse. "Ah, Choo." Mr. Furley froze. He looked at the sneezing dead man, then at Janet and Cindy. "It's a miracle." "No, it isn't, Mr. Furley," Janet said quickly, pulling him aside. "It's a medical condition." "Post-mortem reflex?" Jack sat up, rubbing his nose. "Mr. Furley, I'm not dead, but a guy's trying to kill me. Please, don't give me away." Furley, always a sucker for drama, nodded solemnly. "You can count on me, Jack. But get back in there. Max is coming up the stairs." Chapter 6. The Final Stand. Max entered the room with the grace of a hurricane. He looked at the mourning girls, at Larry, and finally, at the still form in the casket. "Is that him?" Max asked, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Was," Larry said, dabbing his eyes. Max stood over Jack. For a moment, there was a glimmer of something like regret in the big man's eyes. "Well, you did," Janet sobbed. "You scared the life right out of him. I hope you're happy." Max looked down at Jack's pale face. "Poor kid. I guess I went too far." He leaned down, his face inches from Jack's. "Jack, wherever you are, I'm sorry. I really am." But then, the door opened again. April walked in. She saw Max. She saw the casket. But she also saw the way Max was looking at Janet. "Max?" April asked. Max turned, and in his typical fashion, tried to cover his tracks. He didn't see April. He saw an opportunity to pivot. "Oh, April. I was just paying my respects." He turned to Janet. "You know, you're kind of cute under this light. Would you like to go dancing after the funeral?" The room went silent. Jack, unable to contain his indignation at Max hitting on his roommate at his own funeral, sat bolt upright. "That's okay," Jack shouted. "Nobody's home." Max jumped back, nearly knocking over a vase of gladiolas. "He's alive. You're a fake. You're a mistake. And you're a two-timer," April screamed, lunging at Max. "You're hitting on his widow before he left cold?" The funeral home erupted into chaos. April was chasing Max around the casket. Mr. Furley was sneezing from the flowers. Larry was trying to film the whole thing with a Super 8 camera he'd hidden in his pocket. "We're through, Max!" April yelled as they ran out the door. "I'm moving to San Francisco." Chapter 7. The Aftermath. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't the silence of death. It was the silence of relief. Jack climbed out of the casket, stretching his stiff limbs. "I am never getting into another coffin for as long as I live. I'd rather die first." "That's one way to put it," Janet laughed, wiping the fake tears from her cheeks. They walked back to the apartment in the cool evening air. The lights of Santa Monica were beginning to twinkle, and the sound of the ocean was a steady, comforting heartbeat. As they reached the top of the stairs, Jack paused. "Girls," Jack said, his voice soft. "Can I stay in your room tonight? Just this once?" The nightmares. The velvet lining. Janet and Cindy exchanged a look. They saw the lingering fear in his eyes, but also the deep, abiding love. They all shared a bond that transcended the absurdity of their lives. "Well," Janet said, smiling. "Bless you," Jack whispered. As they walked through the door of apartment 201, the world outside faded away. They had their lovable space, they had each other, and as the moon rose over the Pacific, they knew that whatever knocks came to their door tomorrow, they would face them together. Because in this rendezvous called life, 3 wasn't just company, it was family. Chapter 8. The Fragile Peace. The weeks following the Shady Hills incident were bathed in a strange, golden glow. It was as if the near-death experience, fictional as it was, had acted as a catalyst, pulling the 3 roommates closer than ever. But with closeness came a new kind of tension, a vibrating energy that hung in the air during late-night talks over herb tea or early morning breakfasts of slightly too runny eggs. Janet was the first to feel it. She noticed how her gaze lingered a second too long on Jack's hands as he chopped vegetables, or how the sound of his laughter made her heart do a curious little dance. She tried to bury it under piles of carnations and baby's breath at the shop, but the feeling was persistent, a quiet vine growing in the dark. Cindy, however, remained the anchor of their innocence. To her, Jack was simply Jack, her protector, her surrogate brother, the man who knew exactly how she liked her toast. Yet, even Cindy sensed the change. She saw the way Janet looked at Jack when he wasn't watching, and the way Jack's voice softened whenever he spoke to Janet. One humid Tuesday evening, the trio sat on the balcony, the salt air thick and heavy. "Do you think Max is actually in San Francisco?" Cindy asked, swinging her legs. Jack leaned against the railing, his eyes on the horizon. "I hope so. If you're not, I hope he's enjoying the fog." "You looked quite dashing, though," Janet teased, her shoulder brushing his, in a macabre sort of way. Jack turned to her, the playfulness in his eyes replaced by something deeper. "I'd rather look dashing for a dinner date than a memorial service, Janet." The silence that followed was charged. Cindy felt it, and quickly stood up. "I think I'll go check on my avocado plant. It looks a bit depressed." As she slipped inside, the air between Jack and Janet seemed to thin. "Jack," Janet whispered, "about that night, when we thought things were really over, I realized something." "What?" "That home isn't the building, it's the people. And I can't imagine this building without you." Jack reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "I'm not going anywhere, Janet. I promise." Chapter 9. The Culinary Crucible. Life, however, has a way of testing promises. 2 days later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived for Jack. It bore the crest of the Escoffier Excellence Academy, the most prestigious culinary school in the country, located hundreds of miles away in the Napa Valley. Jack opened it with trembling hands. "It's a scholarship," he breathed, the words barely audible. "A 6-month intensive program, full tuition, room and board included." Janet felt a cold stone drop into her stomach. 6 months? "Jack, that's amazing." "It's what you've always wanted," Cindy added, though her voice lacked its usual perkiness. Jack looked at the letter, then at his roommates. "I'd have to leave next month. Napa is a long way from Santa Monica." The celebration that night at the Regal Beagle felt hollow. Larry was over the moon, already planning how he'd use Jack's potential fame to network with wealthy vineyard owners. But back at the apartment, the mood was somber. "Are you going to take it?" Janet asked later that night, as they stood in the kitchen, cleaning up. Jack stopped scrubbing a pan. "I don't know. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, but it means leaving. This." "You have to go, Jack," Janet said, her voice firm despite the ache in her chest. "You're a brilliant chef. You shouldn't be making burger specials at the Beagle forever. You were meant for better things." "Is there anything better than this?" Jack asked, stepping closer. "Your future is better," Janet replied, though she couldn't meet his eyes. Chapter 10. The Ghost of Christmas Past. While Jack wrestled with his decision, a new shadow appeared on the horizon. Her name was Vanessa. She arrived at the apartment door on a rainy Thursday morning, her trench coat dripping and her eyes filled with a familiar, dangerous sparkle. "Jack Tripper," she purred, her voice like velvet. "I heard a rumor you were dead. I'm glad to see the reports were greatly exaggerated." Jack froze. "Vanessa? What are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood, and I missed my favorite sous chef." Vanessa was Jack's first love, the one who had broken his heart in culinary school years ago and had disappeared to Paris without a word. She was sophisticated, talented, and possessed a worldliness that made Janet feel suddenly very small and very plain. "Vanessa is staying with us for a few days," Jack announced that evening, looking caught between nostalgia and sheer panic. The dynamic of the apartment shifted instantly. Vanessa took up space like a queen. She criticized Janet's floral arrangements as pedestrian and mocked Cindy's secretarial work. But mostly, she focused on Jack. Napa? Vanessa laughed over dinner, her hand resting casually on Jack's arm. Darling, why go to Napa when I have an opening for a head chef at my new bistro in Manhattan? Come with me. We can take the city by storm, just like we planned. Janet watched them, a slow-burning jealousy turning into a cold realization. Vanessa represented a world Jack belonged to, a world of high stakes, high fashion, and culinary glory. What did a florist and a secretary have to offer compared to that? Chapter 11. The Midnight Choice. The night before Jack had to give his answer to the academy, and to Vanessa, the apartment was silent. Jack sat in the dark living room, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He thought of Paris, of Manhattan, of the prestige Vanessa offered. He thought of the Napa Valley and the chance to finally become the chef he dreamed of being.